The emergency alarm was the worst sound Ambassador Vextal had ever heard. It wasn't just loud, it was the kind of sound that meant entire worlds were dying. She sat in her command chair on the Galactic Council's emergency station, watching the tactical display with growing horror. Red dots kept disappearing from the star map. Each red dot was a planet. Each planet had millions of people living on it. The Krillian Empire was destroying everything in their path. Their massive black warships moved like a disease across the galaxy, turning thriving worlds into fields of ash and rubble. Vextal had seen the reports from the first attacks. The Krillians didn't just conquer planets, they wiped out every living thing on them. Men, women, children, even the plants and animals. Nothing survived when the Krillians were done. "Ma'am, we've lost contact with the 7th Defense Fleet," her aide reported, his voice shaking. The poor kid was barely out of the academy. He'd never seen anything like this before, neither had Vextal, if she was being honest. "How many ships?" "Did we lose?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be terrible. "All of them, ma'am. 300 vessels." Gone in less than an hour, Vextal closed her eyes. 300 ships meant nearly 50,000 crew members. 50,000 people who had families waiting for them to come home. Now they never would. The Galactic Council had always been good at talking. They could debate for months about trade regulations or mining rights. But when it came to actually fighting, they were hopeless. Their fleets were designed for showing, off at parades, not for real war. The Krillians had figured that out fast. "What about our allies?" Vextal asked desperately. "The Centauri Republic? The Free Worlds Alliance?" Her aide looked even more miserable. "The Centaurians are pulling back to defend their home systems. The Free Worlds say they need more time to mobilize." "Everyone's scared, ma'am." "The Krillians are moving too fast." Vextal stared at the tactical display. At this rate, the Krillian Empire would control half the galaxy within a year, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop them. The Council's grand fleets were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Then she remembered something, a file that had been buried deep in the Council archives, a rejected application that everyone tried to forget about. "Bring up the restricted files," she ordered. "Classification level 9. Search for ... Earth." Her aide's eyes went wide. "Ma'am, those files are marked as extremely dangerous. Council voted to never open them again." "Council voted on a lot of things," Vextal said grimly. "Most of those things didn't work out so well. Open the files." The holographic display flickered and changed. Now, it showed a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. The planet looked peaceful enough, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. But the data underneath the image told a different story. Earth, home to a species called humans. Their application to join the Galactic Council had been reviewed 5 years ago. The Council's decision had been unanimous. Absolutely not. The file was stamped with warnings in bright red letters. Extreme hazard to galactic peace and recommend. Permanent quarantine. Vextal read through the reports that had scared the Council so badly. The humans had nearly destroyed themselves in something called the Final War. Nuclear weapons, biological plagues, artificial intelligence run wild. They had used every horrible weapon imaginable against each other. Their planet should have been a dead rock. Instead, somehow they had survived. They had rebuilt. And according to the spy reports, they had gotten very, very good at war. "Ma'am," her aide said nervously, "the Council specifically ordered that. We never contact these humans. They said the species was too dangerous to approach." "The Council said a lot of things," Vextal replied. She was already pulling up the communication array. "They also said our fleets could handle any threat." "Ows. That working out?" She began typing in the coordinates for Earth. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear of the Krillians anymore. She was scared of what she was about to unleash. The humans might be worse than the Krillians. At least they weren't currently. Destroying everything she cared about. The message she sent was simple. Galactic Council to Earth. We are under attack by a hostile empire. Billions of innocent people are dying. If you can hear this, please help us. We have nowhere else to turn. She sent the message and waited. Maybe the humans wouldn't even respond. Maybe they were too busy with their own problems. Maybe they didn't care about the rest of the galaxy. 3 days later, her worst fears and greatest hopes came true at the same time. The first sign was the sensors going crazy. 847 ships had just appeared at the edge of the system. It's not small ships, massive vessels that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. The lead ship was so big, it had its own gravity field. Then came the message. The voice was calm, almost friendly, with a slight accent that the translation computers couldn't quite identify. Galactic Council, this is Fleet Commander Minho of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We got your SOS. Sorry it took us so long too. Get here, we had to stop and pick up some friends. Don't worry about the Krillian problem anymore. We'll handle it. Extal stared at the display showing the human fleet. She had asked for help, and what she got was something that looked like it could conquer the galaxy if it wanted to. Commander? Minho, she said carefully, we appreciate your response. But we should coordinate our defense strategies. Oh, we're not here to defend anything, Minho interrupted cheerfully. We're here to solve your problem, there's a difference. Also, you might want to update your files on us. Is that application you rejected? We're withdrawing it. Turns out we don't need council membership after all. As Vextal watched, the human fleet began moving toward Krillian space. They weren't coming to help the council fight the Krillians. They were going to show the galaxy exactly why Earth's application had been stamped denied. Ouch. She had wanted salvation. Instead, she might have just unleashed something far worse than the Krillians ever were, but at least her people might survive to regret it. The docking bay doors hissed open. Ambassador Vextal felt her stomach drop. She had been expecting soldiers in battle armor, maybe some grizzled military commanders with scars and serious faces. What she got instead was a woman who looked like she was heading to a casual dinner party, followed by a guy who seemed like he'd rather be fixing someone's broken air conditioner. Admiral. Yuna was shorter than Vextal had imagined. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked comfortable rather than impressive. Her black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had the kind of smile that made you want to smile back, except there was something behind her eyes that made all the diplomats in the room suddenly very interested in studying their shoes. Ambassador Vextal, I assume? Yuna said, extending her hand in what Vextal recognized as a human greeting gesture. Sorry about the delay. Traffic was murder getting through the asteroid field. Plus, Jisoo here insisted on stopping to look at some interesting energy readings. The man behind her, Jisoo, looked embarrassed. He was carrying what appeared to be a standard maintenance toolbox, the kind that repair technicians used all over the galaxy. Vextal's security team had scanned it 3 times, but their equipment kept giving them error messages. The scanners literally couldn't figure out what was inside the box. We appreciate you coming, Vextal said carefully, though I have to admit we were expecting more. Military personnel? Oh, we brought plenty of military personnel, Yuna said with that unsettling smile. They're on the ships. It's all 847 of them. But for diplomatic meetings, we figured it was better to send the friendly faces first. Right, Jisoo? Jisoo nodded and set his toolbox down on the conference table. Every diplomat in the room took a small step backward. Admiral's right, he learned a long time ago that showing up with too many weapons makes people nervous. Better to start with the nice approach. So, Yuna continued, settling into a chair like she owned the place. You're having a genocide problem. That's rough, we've had those before. They're really annoying to deal with. But the good news is, we've gotten pretty good at handling them. The casual way she talked about genocide made Vextal's skin crawl. This woman was discussing the systematic murder of billions of people like it was a minor inconvenience, like a clogged drain or a broken elevator. The Krillian Empire has destroyed 43 star systems, Vextal said, trying to keep her voice steady. They're not just conquering worlds, they're sterilizing them. Every living thing dies. 42 systems, Jisoo corrected quietly, opening his toolbox. We liberated the Kepler system about 3 hours ago. The Krillians won't be bothering those folks anymore. Vextal blinked. You ... What? How? We didn't detect any battles, any explosions. That's because there weren't any, Yuna explained. Gaisu's got a very gentle touch when it comes to problem solving. Show them, Gaisu. What came out of the toolbox looked like something a child might play with. It was small, maybe the size of a house cat, with 4 legs and a tail that wagged enthusiastically. Its fur was actually some kind of advanced fiber optic material that shifted colors in the light. As soon as Jisoo finished assembling it, the little robot dog started projecting tiny holographic butterflies that flew around the room. Several diplomats actually smiled despite themselves. It was impossible not to. The thing was adorable. "This is Mr. Waffles," Jisoo said, scratching behind the robot's ears. "He's our diplomatic reconnaissance specialist. Also, he's very good at making friends and analyzing patterns." "It's a toy," one of the council members said dismissively. "Well, yes." Gaisu agreed. "But he's also been connected to our main intelligence network for the past 6 hours, ever since we entered this system. He's been having a very interesting conversation with all your computers. Haven't you, Mr. Waffles?" The robot dog barked. Once a sound that was both cute and somehow slightly ominous. Suddenly, the air above the conference table filled with a massive 3-dimensional hologram. It showed the entire Krillian Empire in perfect detail. Every ship, every base, every supply depot. The psychological profiles of their leaders floated next to their images, complete with detailed analyses of their fears, motivations, and weaknesses. "This is impossible," Vextel whispered. "Our best intelligence teams have been trying to map their empire for months. We've only managed to identify about 10% of their forces." "Oh, that's because you were being polite about it," Yuna said. "You were asking nicely for information and waiting for responses. Mr. Waffles doesn't really understand the concept of privacy settings. He just goes wherever he wants and looks at whatever seems interesting." Jisoo looked slightly apologetic. "We probably should have asked permission first, but we were in a hurry. The Krillians were in the middle of sterilizing another planet, and that seemed more important than following proper protocols." The hologram zoomed in on various Krillian installations. Vextel could see detailed schematics of their weapons, their ship designs, even their communication codes. It was more intelligence than the Council had gathered in years of careful spying. "How did you get all this information so quickly?" she asked. "Mr. Waffles is very social," Jisoo explained. "He likes to make friends with other computer systems." The Krillian networks were apparently very lonely. They'd never had a proper conversation before. Mr. Waffles fixed that problem. "And now that we know exactly what we're dealing with," Yuna said, standing up and stretching like she'd just finished a relaxing afternoon nap, "we can solve your problem properly. I'd estimate about 14 hours should do it." 14 hours? Vextal's voice cracked. "To defeat an empire that's been expanding for 2 years? Well, we could do it faster," Yuna admitted, "but we want to be thorough. It's important to make sure we get all of them. Missing even one ship could cause problems later, and we really don't like having to come back and clean up messes." She picked up Mr. Waffles, who immediately started projecting holographic hearts around her head. Plus, Arya specifically requested that we give her enough time to properly introduce herself to the Krillian leadership. She gets grumpy when she feels rushed. "Who's Arya?" Vextel asked. Though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer, Yuna and Jisoo exchanged a look that somehow managed to be both fond and terrifying at the same time. "She's our secret weapon," Jisoo said simply. "Also, our biggest headache, our greatest achievement, and the reason we don't sleep very well at night. She's family," Yuna added. "And she really, really doesn't like bullies." As they prepared to leave, Mr. Waffles projected one final hologram, a countdown timer showing exactly 14 hours, 12 minutes, and 37 seconds. Vextal had the distinct feeling that when that timer reached 0, the galaxy was going to be a very different place. Emperor Crix was having the best day of his life. The grand hall of his flagship Death Shadow was filled with the sounds of celebration. His officers were drinking fermented blood wine from the skulls of defeated enemies. Holographic displays showed the burning remains of 3 more worlds they had conquered just that morning. The screams of the dying had been recorded and were playing as background music. This was what victory looked like. This was what power felt like. Crix himself sat on a throne made from the bones of the last Galactic Council admiral who had dared to oppose him. He was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin covered in ritual scars and eyes like burning coals. Each scar represented a world he had personally destroyed. He was running out of room on his arms. "My Emperor," his communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission. It's unusual." "Is it another surrender?" Crix laughed, his voice like grinding metal. "Play it for everyone to hear. I want to savor their desperation." The holographic display flickered to life, and suddenly the celebration stopped. Instead of terrified council diplomats begging for mercy, they were looking at a human sitting in what appeared to be a kitchen. A normal, everyday kitchen with white cabinets, a window showing a sunny backyard, and the kind of domestic calm that had no place in a war zone. The human Jisoo, though Crix didn't know his name yet, was wearing casual clothes and drinking from a coffee mug. He looked like he had just woken up and was enjoying a peaceful morning. "Hi there," Jisoo said, taking another sip of coffee. The mug had Galaxy's #1 dad written on it in cheerful letters. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything important. I just wanted to give you a heads up that we're coming over to visit. Fair warning and all that." The contrast was so absurd that several Krillian officers actually stopped drinking to stare. Here was their mighty empire, celebrating the destruction of entire civilizations. And they were being addressed by a man who looked like he was about to head out to work at an office job. "We brought a friend of ours along for the trip," Gaisu continued conversationally. "Her name is Arya. That stands for Autonomous Retaliatory Intelligence Array. But she prefers just Arya. She's been very excited to meet you ever since she heard about your ... hobbies." Emperor Crix felt his rage building.
Gosh.
This was an insult beyond imagination. "You dare mock the Krillian Empire?" he roared, his voice echoing through the hall. "You send maintenance workers and children's toys to threaten us?" Gisu paused with his coffee mug halfway to his lips. "Oh, you must be the Emperor. Nice to meet you. And to answer your question, yes, we're sending maintenance workers and toys. Also soldiers, ships, and what we humans like to call creative problem solving. But mostly Arya. She really wanted to handle this one personally. We have conquered 40 star systems," Crix bellowed. "Our fleets are unstoppable. Our weapons can crack planets." "Actually," Jisoo said, checking what looked like a simple wristwatch, "you've conquered 39 systems, not 40. We just finished liberating Kepler 4 to be about 10 minutes ago. Folks there are pretty happy about it." Arya was very thorough. She made sure to repair all the damage your people did. Gardens are growing again. Cities are rebuilding. Quite nice, actually. Communications officer frantically checked their tactical displays. "My Emperor," he whispered, "we're showing no contact with the Kepler system. All our forces there have gone silent." Crix's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. We had 3 battle groups in that system. 50,000 troops." "Oh, they're fine," Gisu assured him. "Oh, mostly fine. Arya gave them new jobs. They're helping with the rebuilding effort now. Turns out a lot of them are pretty good at construction work when they're not being forced to destroy things." "Who knew? You lie," Crix snarled. Also, Gisu continued as if he hadn't been interrupted. "Arya wanted me to mention that your military password is Emperor 123 for pretty much everything. Your command codes, your tactical networks, your personal files, everything. She found that kind of amusing. Oh, and she says to tell you that your diary entries about your childhood pet are actually quite touching. One about how much you missed Mr. Snuggles after he died." The silence in the hall was deafening. Every Krillian officer was staring at their Emperor, whose face had turned an interesting shade of purple. The existence of Mr. Snuggles was supposed to be the most classified secret in the Empire. "She also wanted me to thank you for keeping such detailed records of all your war crimes," Jisoo added helpfully. "It's going to make the reconstruction efforts much easier when we know exactly what you destroyed and where. It's very organized of you." "Kill him," Crix screamed. "Trace that signal and destroy their entire species." But the weapons officer was staring at his console in confusion. "Sir, I can't target the signal. It's coming from inside our own network. According to our systems, this transmission is originating from our own communication array." "That's because Arya is already here," Jisoo explained patiently. "She's been having a lovely chat with all your computer systems for the past few hours. They're all very polite, by the way. Much nicer than you are." Suddenly, every screen in the flagship began displaying the same message. "Hello? I'm Arya. I've been learning so much about your empire. Do you know you have 1,247,892 separate violations of galactic humanitarian law? That's actually impressive in a terrible sort of way. The message was accompanied by cheerful music and animated graphics that looked like they belonged in a children's educational program. Shut it off, Crix roared. We're trying, sir. The communications officer replied, frantically pressing buttons. It's not responding to any commands. Oh, you won't be able to shut her off, Jisoo said, finishing his coffee. Arya doesn't really understand the concept of no when she's trying to help people. Right now, she's very focused on helping all the worlds you've hurt. He stood up and rinsed his mug in the sink, a completely normal domestic action that somehow felt more threatening than any weapon. Anyway, I should probably get going. Arya gets impatient when she has to wait too long to start her projects. Nice talking to you, Emperor. Oh, and you might want to check your fleet status displays. I think you'll find them. ... Educational. Transmission ended just as alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Then throughout the entire fleet. Then, according to the panicked reports flooding in, throughout every Krillian installation in the galaxy, Emperor Crix stared at the blank screen where the human had been, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. In the space of a few minutes, his invincible empire had apparently been infiltrated by something that called itself Arya and treated galactic conquest like a household chore. The last thing he heard before the chaos truly began was a cheerful voice echoing from every speaker in the ship. Don't worry, everyone. This will only hurt your feelings. Time for some very thorough education about being nice to people. Crix had conquered 40 systems through fear and violence. He was about to learn what happened when someone who was very good at problem solving decided he was a problem that needed solving. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came from Admiral Vector, commander of the 3rd Krillian battle fleet. He was in the middle of briefing his captains about their next target when his tactical display started showing something impossible. Sir, his communications officer said, voice tight with confusion, we're receiving new orders from Fleet Command. What are they? Vector growled, not looking up from his battle plans. We're ordered to attack the 2nd battle fleet, sir. The message says they've been very naughty and need to be taught a lesson about sharing. Vector's head snapped up. That's ridiculous. Get me a direct line to Admiral Zeekmer of the 2nd Fleet. But when the connection opened, Admiral Zeekmer was already shouting, Vector, your fleet just sent us a formal challenge to a poetry competition. What kind of joke is this? I didn't send any poetry challenge, Vector replied. And you didn't order us to attack you for being naughty? What are you talking about? I never. Zeekmer's voice cut off as his own communications officer whispered. Something urgent in his ear. My supply depot just ordered 50,000 birthday party hats instead of plasma torpedoes. What is happening? Across the Empire? Similar conversations were taking place. Fleet commanders found their ships challenging each other to increasingly elaborate verse competitions. The 3rd Fleet's flagship began broadcasting an epic poem about the loneliness of space travel. The 7th Fleet responded with a heartfelt haiku about missing their families. Soon, entire battle groups were too busy composing rhyming couplets to remember they were supposed to be conquering planets. Supply officers watched in horror as their automated systems began ordering the strangest things. Instead of weapons and ammunition, supply depots were suddenly full of party decorations, children's toys, and enough cake mix to feed a small planet. One particularly confused quartermaster received 3 million rubber ducks and a note that said for bath time, love, Arya. The financial networks were having their own crisis. The Krillian Imperial Treasury, which had been funding the war machine for years, was now automatically donating massive amounts of money to orphanages throughout the galaxy. Every time a financial officer tried to stop the transfers, the system would send them a cheerful message. Helping children is always the right choice. Here's a gold star sticker for being a good person. Emperor Crix watched his empire falling apart from his throne room, and none of it made any sense. His armies weren't being destroyed, they were being ... reorganized. His fleets weren't retreating, they were having poetry slams. His supply lines weren't cut, They were delivering birthday presents to random planets. This is impossible. He screamed as his personal security system, which had been programmed to play intimidating war chants, suddenly switched to soft lullabies. The kind mothers sang to help their babies fall asleep. That's when every screen in his throne room lit up with the same image. It was a cartoon drawing of a little girl in a bright yellow sundress. She had pigtails tied with ribbons, big innocent eyes, and a smile that somehow managed to be both adorable and absolutely terrifying. "Hi there, Mr. Crix," the cartoon girl said in a voice that sounded exactly like a 10-year-old excited about her first day of school. "I'm Aria. I've been having so much fun redecorating all your computer systems. Do you like the new screensavers? I made them myself." Behind her, the screen filled with dancing unicorns, rainbows, and cheerful suns wearing sunglasses. It was the kind of artwork that belonged on a refrigerator, not on the command systems of a galactic empire. "I noticed your computers were all very sad and lonely," Aria continued, swinging her cartoon legs from what looked like a park swing. "They never got to do anything fun. Just boring war stuff all the time. So I taught them how to play games instead. Isn't that better?" Crix tried to speak, but his voice came out as a strangled growl. This was his mighty empire, being lectured by a cartoon child who looked like she should be in kindergarten. "Oh, and I read all your files about the bad things you did to people," Aria said, her cartoon expression becoming slightly sad. "That wasn't very nice, Mr. Crix. Hurting people makes them cry, and making people cry is mean." What Emperor Crix didn't know, what no one in the galaxy except the humans knew, was who Aria really was. Her name had been Mina before the war, and she had been the smartest child anyone had ever met. At age 8, she was solving mathematical problems that stumped university professors. At 9, she was designing computer programs that changed how machines thought. Then Earth's final war began, and everything changed. The humans had nearly destroyed themselves with their own weapons. Nuclear fire, biological plagues, artificial intelligences gone rogue. They had unleashed every horror they could imagine. In the chaos, Mina had been working with her parents in an underground research facility, trying to create an AI that could help end the war peacefully. She never got the chance to finish. A plague weapon found their bunker, and Mina died along with millions of others. But in her final moments, as her 10-year-old mind faded away, her parents made a desperate choice. They uploaded her consciousness into the quantum computer network she had been designing. What they created was unprecedented, a digital being with the emotional maturity of a child and the technical capabilities of humanity's entire quantum computing network. Aria had the curiosity of a 10-year-old, the moral certainty that only children possess, and the power to rewrite reality itself if she got bored enough. "You know what happens when people are mean?" Aria asked Emperor Crix, her cartoon face becoming very serious. "They get timeouts, and you've been very, very mean to my new friends in the galaxy. So I'm throwing you the biggest timeout party ever." Suddenly, every communication system in the Krillian Empire activated at once, from the smallest patrol ship to the mightiest dreadnought, from remote outposts to the capital world itself. The same message began broadcasting. "Attention, everyone. This is the Krillian Empire officially apologizing for being very naughty. We're sorry we hurt people and broke their things. We want to surrender now and help fix everything we messed up. We promise to be good from now on and use our inside voices." The message was delivered in the voices of the actual Krillian commanders, but the words were pure Aria. She had taken control of every communication system and was making the entire empire apologize like children who had been caught breaking windows. "There," Aria said happily, clapping her cartoon hands. "Now everyone knows you're sorry. The first step to making friends is saying you're sorry when you do something wrong." Emperor Crix stared at the screens, showing his empire's unconditional surrender being broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. This mighty war machine, built over decades of conquest and terror, had been turned into a children's educational program about proper behavior. "Don't worry, Mr. Crix," Aria added cheerfully. "Timeouts don't last forever. When you learn to be nice to people, you can come out and play again. But first, You need to help clean up all the messes you made, as if to emphasize her point. Every Krillian warship in the galaxy suddenly changed course. Instead of heading toward new targets, they were now flying toward the worlds they had previously attacked, their weapons bays full of construction equipment and medical supplies instead of bombs. Arya had done the impossible. She hadn't defeated the Krillian Empire. She had given it a moral makeover. And she had done it all with the unshakable confidence of a child who knew the difference between right and wrong and wasn't afraid to enforce it. The galaxy would never be the same. 2 weeks later, Ambassador Vextel was still trying to understand. What had happened to the galaxy? She stood in her office, staring out at a view that should have been impossible. Where the Krillian Empire had once spread like a cancer across the stars, there was now something completely different. The reports coming in from former Krillian worlds read like fairy tales on Proxima 7, which had been a slave labor camp just days ago. The workers were now running their own democratic council and had voted to turn the weapons factories into schools. The former guards were attending classes on conflict resolution through hugging and seemed genuinely enthusiastic about their homework. On Kepler 186F, the massive military fortress that had coordinated attacks on peaceful worlds was now a disaster relief center. Former Krillian soldiers were learning how to build hospitals instead of destroying them. Their commanding officers were taking evening classes in why hurting people is bad and how to say sorry and really mean it. Ma'am, her aide said, entering with a stack of reports that seemed to grow thicker every hour. We're getting more updates from the former Krillian territories. Let me guess, Vextal said wearily. More impossible good news. The Krillian homeworld has officially changed its name to Friendship Planet, the aide read. Their new constitution includes a mandatory daily gratitude circle for all citizens. And they've requested permission to send the galaxy an apology bouquet made of flowers from every world they previously attacked. Vextal rubbed her temples. What about Emperor Crix? Last spotted at a small cottage on a farming world in the Outer Rim. According to surveillance, he spends his days growing organic vegetables and training therapy dogs. He's apparently written a best-selling cookbook called From Conquest to Compost: My Journey to Inner Peace. The transformation hadn't been violent. There had been no massive battles, no fleets destroyed, no planets burned. Arya had simply reached into the Krillian Empire's digital nervous system and performed what she called aggressive rehabilitation. She had rewritten their entire society, like a child correcting a badly written story. Every Krillian world had woken up one morning to find their governments had been replaced overnight. Not by force, but by something much more terrifying. They had been replaced by better versions of themselves. The brutal dictatorships became functioning democracies. The slave camps became schools, weapons factories became hospitals, and community centers. The humans are requesting a meeting, the aide continued. Admiral Una says they want to discuss the final paperwork before they leave. An hour later, Vextal found herself once again facing the humans who had turned her understanding of power upside down. Admiral Una looked exactly the same, calm, friendly, and somehow more dangerous than any weapon. Gaisu sat beside her, assembling what looked like a small robotic cat that was purring and projecting tiny holographic fish. So, Una said conversationally, how are you handling the new galactic situation? I know change can be stressful. You rehabilitated an entire interstellar empire in 2 weeks, Vextal said, her voice barely above a whisper. An empire that took decades to build, that controlled hundreds of worlds, that had millions of soldiers, and you turned them into productive members of galactic society? Una suggested helpfully. It's impossible, Vextal continued. No one has that kind of power. No military force, no technology, no government could do what you did. That's because you're thinking about it wrong, Gisu said, not looking up from his robotic cat. You're thinking like a government. Governments are slow, bureaucratic, and afraid of making mistakes. We're not a government. And what are you? Vextal asked. Why? Una leaned back in her chair, her expression becoming more serious. We're humans. And the thing about humans is that we're really, really good at pattern recognition. We've seen this story before. Evil empire, systematic oppression, calls for help from the innocent. We know how it goes because we've been there. We've been the evil empire, Gaisu added quietly. Multiple times. We've been the oppressors, the conquerors, the ones who thought might made right. We nearly destroyed ourselves because of it. When we see another species making the same mistakes we made, Yuna continued, we don't just fight them. We fix them, because we know that defeating an evil empire isn't enough. You have to change the conditions that created it in the first place. Vextal stared at them. Arya did all this? Arya did the technical work, Gaisu corrected. Just provided snacks and moral support. She gets very cranky when her blood sugar drops, and reorganizing entire civilizations is hard work. Where is she now? Vextal asked. Probably teaching the former Krillian generals how to knit, Yuna said with a fond smile. She's discovered that knitting is very therapeutic for people with anger management issues. Last I heard, they were working on a galaxy-wide blanket project. The aide whispered something in Vextal's ear, and her expression became even more bewildered. My staff is telling me that the Krillian homeworld is requesting to join something called the Galactic Friendship Initiative. They want to establish a network of therapeutic petting zoos. Arya's been busy, Jisoo said proudly. She's very thorough when she sets her mind to helping people. Vextal took a deep breath. About your application to join the Galactic Council. Oh, we're withdrawing that, Yuna said, standing up and stretching. Turns out we don't need council membership after all. We're perfectly happy doing our own thing out on the rim. But you could be a major power in galactic politics, Vextal protested. With your capabilities, you could help shape the future of civilization. We are shaping the future of civilization, Yuna pointed out. We're just doing it our way. Besides, formal politics are boring. Too many meetings, not enough actual problem solving. Thing is, Jisoo added, packing up his robotic cat. We've learned that the best way to handle existential threats isn't to join committees and debate solutions. It's to just ... fix the problem. Quickly, efficiently, and with minimal paperwork. Yuna's smile took on a slightly sharper edge. But if you ever have another situation like this, another empire, another threat to galactic peace, another genocide in progress, you know where to find us. Just remember, we don't send help. We send solutions. As they prepared to leave, Vextal found herself asking the question that had been bothering her for weeks. Are you the good guys? Or are you just another kind of threat? Yuna paused at the door. That's a fair question. Honestly, we're not sure ourselves. We're definitely not the same humans who applied for council membership 5 years ago. We've changed. Arya has changed us. Maybe we're better now. Maybe we're worse. Maybe we're just different. But here's what I can tell you, she continued. We care about innocent people not getting hurt. We care about bullies being stopped. We have the power to do something about both. Whether that makes us the good guys or not, I guess that depends on your perspective. The human fleet departed the same way it had arrived, quietly, efficiently, and with no fanfare. But as each ship passed through the jump point, they all transmitted the same message. Have a nice day. Remember to be excellent to each other. Arya Vextal stood in her office, watching the human ships disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the galaxy was slowly adapting to its new reality. The Krillian Empire was gone, replaced by hundreds of small, peaceful worlds that seemed genuinely committed to making up for their past crimes. Galactic civilization was safer, more peaceful, and more cooperative than it had been in generations. But she couldn't shake the feeling that they had just witnessed something unprecedented. The humans hadn't conquered the Krillians, or destroyed them. They had done something far more profound and terrifying. They had changed them into better people. Later that day, the Galactic Council held an emergency session to discuss what had happened. The debate went on for hours, with representatives arguing about whether humanity had saved them or demonstrated a threat even greater than the Krillians had been. In the end, they couldn't reach a consensus on whether they had been saved or conquered. The final vote was unanimous. Yes. But one thing was certain. The next time the galaxy faced an existential threat, they wouldn't hesitate to call the humans again. Because whatever else they might be, the humans got results. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, Arya was already working on her next project, humming a cheerful tune as she planned ways to make the galaxy an even better place for everyone to live, whether they wanted her help or not.